This is Inspiring Minds, a podcast focused on thought-provoking conversations between BSB students and our world-class faculty.
Hi, thank you for listening to this episode of Inspiring Minds. My name is Manny Garcia. I'm a senior in VSB with majors in accounting, finance, and economics. I'm joined today by Dr. Erica Harris, the Andrew J. Melton Jr., Class of 42 Assistant Professor in Accounting and Information Systems. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
So first off, can you tell us about yourself and the research you focus on?
Sure. Manny, I am focusing my accounting research in the nonprofit area with a primary focus on how donors view some of the information that they provide to their constituents and how they react to that information. For example, I'll look at the kinds of financial information that are provided to donors, how transparent they are with that information, and if donors subsequently give those organizations more donations because they like what they see. They like the fact that the organization is providing transparent information, information that they can trust and use to help them make their donation decisions. And that has been shown in our research to garner more resources for the organization.
I'd like to focus on your paper, Determinants and Consequences of Nonprofit Transparency, as we approach the season of giving. In your research, did you find any consequences to nonprofits being transparent about their financial information?
In this project, we look at a pretty large sample of industry-diverse nonprofit organizations, over 14,000 observations in that study. And we find that organizations that exhibit stronger governance, so they have better board policies and practices, those that have higher operating margins, so they're performing better in terms of generating revenues over their expenses, and ones that have more professional staff are all more associated with being more transparent. And we define transparency using a metric that has been outlined by guidestar.org. So this is a large charity intermediary organization that has a link or a relationship with the IRS, where they receive all of the informational tax returns for U.S. nonprofit organizations. Those are the Form 990s. They compile that information for donors to access to help them make their giving decisions. So in the process of compiling that information, they also score organizations on how transparent or not they are. And they do that based on the information that the organization provides on their website. If they add very basic information, like just the organization's name, they confirm who the board of directors and the leaders are, they get what they call a bronze level transparency rating. And then if they provide additional information, like a set of audited financial statements, and they confirm some of their financial information, they get a silver rating. And then we go to organizations that provide performance information about the organization. So beyond financial measures, things like how many patients are served or how many homeless people are provided a meal, et cetera. And these are ones that we believe are really providing donors with the information that they crave to help them make their donation decision. We find that these organizations also ultimately receive more in contributions from the donors that they're providing the information to. So we know that there's really good effects related to providing this information to donors, and we really dig into what information is out there and what kinds of organizations are providing those to donors.
As far as transparency goes, there's really no negative effects to a company or a nonprofit being more transparent with their information, correct?
No, there's not, right? More information is better. We know across the board from prior literature as well as my work that organizations that are providing better and more information to donors is yielding better performance outcomes as well as more funding and support for the organization. As a matter of fact, in the same study, we also find that organizations that have better performance to report actually accrue incrementally more in contributions than organizations that have decent performance to report. So it's great that you provide donors with information, but when you provide donors with information that also shows that you've been doing a really great job, you're receiving even more in incremental contributions from your donors.
So aside from transparency, what other issues arise in nonprofit accounting?
So I have a couple of other projects that look at different aspects of nonprofit organizations and how they impact donor funding. One project that I'm particularly proud of is looking at a myriad of nonprofit governance metrics, 21 to be exact, and we look at organizations that have these practices and policies in place and how that impacts future contributions of the organization. And we do find that organizations that are better run, better governed, are garnering more in contributions from their donors and supporters. Another project that I've worked on looks at financial audit outcomes. So specifically, we kind of go the other way, and we find that organizations that have a going concern report receive fewer future donations. So we see that donors and supporters are looking at these financial reporting outcomes and sort of withholding their contributions to organizations that they don't believe are going to be fiscally viable in the future. We also have a project that looks at fraud and organizations that report fraud on their Form 990. Not surprisingly, donors are also withholding contributions to those organizations in the future. However, we do find that organizations that have a fraud, if they are more transparent about that fraud, they can mitigate the effects of donors holding back their contributions. So even though you've had a fraud, or you've sustained a fraud within your organization, if you're very forthcoming with information about the fraud and let donors know what happened and maybe steps that you're taking to remediate that breakdown within your organization, they still reduce their contributions, but not at as high a rate. Similarly, organizations that have sustained a fraud, if they are better governed, they can also mitigate that future decline in contributions. So I think those are interesting and exciting features of nonprofit organizations and sort of the impact on outside support for the organization.
Could you also speak about the impact celebrity endorsements have on contributions?
Yes, absolutely. This was a great project I loved working on, where we looked at a sample of 500 nonprofit organizations that had celebrity affiliations. And we found support for what we called the celebrity lift hypothesis, that celebrity affiliation was associated with increased public support, right? That donors found a value and could relate to an organization that had a celebrity endorsement. The relationship was increasing with the number of celebrity endorsements up to a point of saturation. That was 86 celebrities in our sample, so organizations that had a lot of support. And it was also most important for the really influential celebrities. So we went in and categorized them as being like the A-list celebrities, the B-list, et cetera. So if you had an A-list celebrity, that really brought about higher future contributions. We also found, interestingly, that organizations that were able to come up with a celebrity endorsement, so a celebrity that would be affiliated with their organization, were able to forego some of their usual fundraising expenses. So we thought this was especially cool, that there was a substitution effect going on, that you no longer had to spend as much to get the word out about your organization because you had this celebrity person that was able to help you do that.
So finally, as we wrap up our podcast today, what tips do you have for people to safely select charities?
Great question, Manny. There are a lot of great resources out there for donors, specifically third-party intermediary organizations that gather, compile, and rate nonprofit information and provide that in an easy-to-read and easy-to-follow format for donors. So I have a project that also looks at these third-party intermediary organizations, and we find that organizations that report just being rated by these agencies garner more donations from their supporters. And of course, the consistency and the level of those ratings also brings about higher and more donations for the organization. So these pieces of information are being used by donors, and they're out there and available. So great websites that you can go to. Our Charity Navigator, they rate nonprofit organizations with 1 to 5 stars, and they do it on several dimensions and provide a lot of good information out there for donors. Also provides executive compensation information, which I know is important to donors as well. They also provide some nice links in comparison to other organizations of similar sizes in the same industries. So it really gives you a breadth of information to use to help you make your donation decision. GuideStar, as I mentioned already, has a lot of transparency information and also synthesizes information for donors. The Better Business Bureau has the Wise Giving Alliance. They also provide information to donors to help them make their donation decisions. So the point is, there's a lot of great info out there about U.S. nonprofit organizations. These rating agencies are doing a great job gathering information and putting it in one easy-to-find website. So I really encourage donors to use that information to make informed decisions, because that's the way we're going to extend their dollars, right, to those organizations that are doing the good work and that are really providing for their missions. In that way, I hope that we can keep the nonprofit dollars safe and doing the most good work in our country.
Thank you so much again for joining us today.
Well, thanks, Manny. I have to give a shout out to so many of the graduate and undergraduate research assistants students at Villanova School of Business that have helped me with so many of these projects and the support I've received from the college and the university. I believe this is great work and ways that we can really give back to our communities.
Thank you for listening to Inspiring Minds. Stay tuned for our next installment featuring more VSB students discussing research topics with our world-class faculty.